3, 2, 1.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us at the Quarterly Close Community Coalition, the Coalition of Longmeadow, organizing substance education for the community. This is our meeting here at Longmeadow Public Schools Central Office in room A15. We have a wonderful presentation tonight prepared by members and attendees of the 2023 CADCA National Forum Conference down in Washington, D.C. that happened in January, late January, early February. And we have a bunch of students who are leaders here in the community of Longmeadow, and we have some community leaders from the JCC, Bay State Pediatrics, and Ms. Warren from Longmeadow Public Schools. And we're excited to present tonight our findings and our takeaways from the 2023 CADCA National Forum. CADCA is the Coalitions of America, Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America. That's what it is. And oddly enough, they're trying to change the acronym's definition during this conference. Yeah, which was kind of a funny. Yeah, it was tough to understand where that was headed. But now we are excited to present what Longmeadow's takeaways were tonight. So thank you for joining us, and thank you so much for LCTV for hosting this meeting. So who's first?
I think you are.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, this is it. This is there's a slide up here of our Massachusetts delegation. So there's over 30 community drug-free coalition funded coalitions in Massachusetts, and a bunch of them had representation at this year's National Forum in DC. And we dressed up in our fancy clothes and tried to present all of our opportunities for partnership and education and engagement with our elected officials. So this is in the Hart Building, I believe, the Senate building down in DC, where we met with Elizabeth Warren's public health policy liaison. And we met also with Congressman Richie Neal's team of aides who work on public health policy to present the coalition's work and the coalition's funding and where we see the need for more attention and more interventions and strategies to address youth substance use prevention needs. And so this was the Massachusetts delegation was a great group of students and community leaders who were very well spoken and very passionate about prevention and primary prevention initiatives. So we were so excited to work with them as a team. We met the day before, this was on a Wednesday, and we met Tuesday night to plan for the big trip to Capitol Hill, and it was a really great opportunity to collaborate across the state. And then this is our, we went to the House of we went to the gallery, the House Gallery. We got tickets or passes from Congressman Richie Neal's aides to attend a really odd and quiet, House Gallery. I think they weren't technically voting like as a Congress on anything, but they were presenting issues about remote working, federal remote working issues. But it was really awesome to watch and observe how it actually happens when people are speaking on the House floor. It was a beautiful chambers, and we weren't allowed to take any pictures because that's something that they don't allow. And so we were just sitting there and observing and witnessing American democracy at work.
Witnessing Jamie Raskin.
Jamie Raskin
was speaking.
Was speaking, and there was a few, Lauren Boebert.
Yeah.
She was speaking, and there's some other people speaking and walking around. But there's maybe only 5 actual congressional leaders walking around the entire House floor. So it was really eerily quiet, but cool to see, cool to witness. And some of our student leaders are going to present. Actually, some parent and community leaders will help us present our takeaways from that trip. And I believe, is this Dr. Lisa Taylor Kelly?
Yeah.
Is this you? You want
You threw it out of order. I threw it at the end.
to? Oh, sorry. Yeah, we like to keep you on your
I
toes.
mine to the end too. So
We tried to organize them by topic, so like people who were talking, so there would be like a flow to it, And I guess I do want to say for anybody watching and just for us, it's the first time that we're sharing with each other our thoughts of things that we attended. So you may not have heard what other people attended. The youth were together a lot, but the adults went in a lot of different directions. So it's kind of a good opportunity to bring it together and see what we had as takeaways that we thought might apply here. So.
Dr. Lisa Taylor Kelly from Bay State Pediatrics, who's one of our board members.
All right.
Take it away.
I'm not going to say anything. I think that I'm just going to focus on the thing that I thought was most interesting, and this was a talk given by, I wanted to say it was somebody from the University of Maryland.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
I have her
the
name. Later on, I have her name.
Yeah, I
and
have
contact info.
her email address, actually. But just the idea that people tend to, when they hear something first, or the first time they hear it, they tend to believe it more as true. And that's why it's important to talk early to your kids and give them facts, make them think through problems, themselves, use their own intelligence and logic. Why is it? It's just like, during the holidays when we're selling toys, what's the marketing? What are the thoughts behind it? How does the business benefit from you using this? And then, like we do with all other things now is, when you do your own research, you want to have good sources of information. And I just added one of those nice, handy conversation starter sites.
Which I think this is the page itself, right? Geared
Yeah,
towards
that's
college
it.
parents?
Yep.
So it's collegeparentsmatter.org.
Yeah.
And that's Dr. Amelia Aria from University of Maryland's School of Public Health.
But I
She was,
think
she was awesome.
I think it's also, it was this one, or I had attended one on alcohol. There's also talking about it before your kids go off to school, to college, not just continued education beforehand.
Preferably by a pond
That's
Yeah.
right.
and a dock.
With
Shoes
your
and
feet,
socks
with your
optional.
feet.
Yes, yes.
That's right.
A relaxing
When it's
setting.
most beneficial for children.
Nothing like a little foot therapy.
In fact, you shouldn't engage in any conversation around substance use unless your feet are soaking wet.
Submerged in
Yeah,
water.
yeah. It's a great resource. And the University of Maryland has done so much research on the sort of pre-college entry prevention, which is one of the gaps in interventions and strategies in community coalitions. A lot of high school, middle school work, some college work, but it's really hard to capture that transitioning age. And so I appreciated a lot of the work that she did with pre-bunking. I like that. The idea of like, I've heard this, talking with your teenagers before they maybe are hearing things, and you can sort of help shape the narrative of the content that they're thinking about with substance use.
Okay.
Okay, I guess I can start. I'm Francesca, and I'm a sophomore. Is that all they need to know about me? I mean, there's so much, but I think that's a good start.
Are you a good swimmer?
I mean, some people say yes.
Okay, I'm very modest.
So, Grace and Caitlin and I, we went to the Getting Candid with allowing kids to share their point of views on drugs with trusted adults. So, to kind of start, we talked about framing the message, how the parents have different ideas than their kids, and maybe school counselors and other people that are important in kids' lives. And most of surveys that they did found that high schoolers really value their families and the future, which is very different from what some adults think. They think more about sports and their interests, when really it's family. So yeah. Grace?
Then they had this little flow chart thing that was kind of guidance in a conversation between a trusted adult and students. This first, you had to establish trust, that you couldn't go farther in a conversation about substance use without trust, and then gather insights. That's where you learn what the child, what's important to them, so those things like family in the future. And then you use those to frame the conversation you're having. and then provide them with facts and suggest action.
And who are you?
Oh, I'm Grace. I'm a junior. I'm not a good swimmer.
So
She's a
kind
saver.
So kind of the why to all of this is to break the cycle of just drug use and then to reduce the stigma with it. We learned in almost all of the kind of conference things that we went to that stigma is a huge part of related to drugs and all things. So they want to reduce that. And then 3 was take the next steps. So depending on what a certain person thinks that they should do or how the adults think should happen.
Are you looking to see if we had a link to it?
No.
All right. And I know we included some of that perspective even when we had the Parents' Night recently, right? You were talking about making sure that students were represented there, so I appreciate that.
Can I ask you a question of the presenters? So how is Longmeadow as a community and maybe the school district doing with elevating youth voices in prevention work?
I think we're pretty good. I mean, there's a lot of youth in this room that I think that's something that
83% of the room,
is
yeah.
valuable. So,
Yeah, I agree.
I was really setting you guys up there. Or setting up Longmeadow. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So the next, we have the Ripple Effect of Positive Youth Engagement, which was based off a presentation from South Portland, Maine. And I don't know if students want to go first, and then I actually also shared notes on that after too, so I'll kind of add on a couple of points.
So one thing that spoke to me, I'm Amy Steck from the JCC. Also, I have a daughter here at Longmeadow High School. Just the whole reason we were kind of in DC was to elevate student voice and to engage our youth. And so if our experience and our youth, the ones who are in this room, the 83%, if that's an indication of what we're getting into in the future, I'm really excited, and I'm happy for our future. The key takeaways are up there, but I think what I was most proud of, and I tried to reflect that in the pictures, was the bravery that the kids had, that you all had during those moments when you were sitting in, senators' offices and congressmen' offices, and really speaking from your heart about ways to essentially save yourselves. I thought that was really great. So I was very proud to represent lots of different kind of groups on this trip, but I think the most important part for me as a person who works with youth is just knowing that we're going to be okay if they're all like you all. So thank you. I don't think I've said that to you. I know we've texted a lot and stuff, but yeah, you're doing a great job. So keep doing that great job.
I thought it was a student slide, Amy.
That's okay.
Because they had
No.
pictures of the students.
Yeah.
So youthful.
So it is.
Yes, I
So
am. Oh no, sorry. I'm sorry. Yes, it is.
So I love their slogan is all ages, all in, and they had several initiatives that they do which really bring youth together with different generations in the community as well. So I loved some of their ideas, which Amy also highlighted, but one of the ones that I especially liked was restorative practices. So they bring school administrators, school social workers, law enforcement, and the community center together to provide diversion when there are issues that come up at school related to substance use. So we were even talking about the JCC possibly, being involved. So if there was a community service requirement for something that happened with a student, we could engage with community partners.
Call us.
To deal with
We will
that.
say
So-
yes.
So I would love to have a conversation with similar players at the table about how we could do something like that here. And another partnership that I thought was pretty interesting that they did is putting together a youth employee assistance program. And for us, I think we think about the shops as a place where a lot of young people are employed. And if there was something that we could provide for businesses, which would be a resource for teenage workers, so if you have somebody who's working at your business and you notice that they could use some help with an issue in their life, that we have a way to funnel them to resources. and they posted them on all of the employers' websites. I think they had like a website clearinghouse of all the resources that were kind of available in the community to provide help for the youth. So it's kind of another entry point, because like in our, I mean, I work at the school, so I'm always kind of knowing what the school is doing to help young people get help. But sometimes it's easier people are more comfortable getting help outside of school, right? So anyway, I thought that was a cool idea. They also took a hotspot and turned it into a positive youth engagement place. So they had community mapped to find out like where a lot of people were going to use substances, and they wrote a grant and turned it into a skate park with a lot of positive, like just a lot of positive presence instead. So they turned it into a good positive activity place. What else? Oh, they said we should get a spinning wheel. So she said it
They
was like
said
the
that
best
several
money,
times,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, she said it was the best money they ever spent. Literally like a tabletop spinner that you can use to engage people in games when you're going out having like tables and outreach and stuff. So I put that down with like a little link to a spinner.
We can do that.
And yeah, that's pretty easy.
easy enough.
It's easy enough. And the last one was a youth panel for parents, which we just did it at the parents' night. We had the youth join us for that. So I feel like we already incorporate youth voices there. So it was nice to see them doing that as well. Move on.
Oh, here we go again.
You got 2 slides?
And then you can just go home.
She is fantastic.
More, early and stick with it. I think I don't think I have a whole lot to add here. The one thing that came up in this talk that I was thinking about our community was, because I don't think we're going to be increasing any drinking ages in the near future beyond 21. But there is a correlation between decreased alcohol outlet density in a community. It's effective in decreasing misuse and, secondary to that, injuries. Because I know we've talked about liquor licenses and what else, outlets. And then again, the parent conversation starter website there, or in blue. So that's all I'm going to say, because I feel like I'm being redundant.
Well said. It was good.
Thanks, Dr. Kelly.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's interesting to think about the outlets and what happens when you increase them.
I attended there was a webinar, a state Mass DPH webinar that they featured Boston University Professor David Jernigan, who used to be with Johns Hopkins, but now he's moved up to Boston. And all he does is alcohol marketing policy. Not all he does, but that's his focus. And he made it very available. He's like, if you guys want me to come out and do a town hall, and that's all they talk about is like alcohol policy that you can sort of start with locally, that you can change things, about licensing and yeah. And then, I mean, his big outcome is basically, I think he was really proud of Nepal. He works international, and Nepal just outlawed all alcohol advertisements as a country.
Wow.
Which, like, things like that, because he's seen the effect of like what marketing does. It's very specifically engages people so that you increase use, and they're hoping that it's just adults, right? But then there's that gray area where you kind of have to get the rising adults' attention. And anyways, he'd be a really cool featured speaker, I think, for a town hall down the road. I think, and alcohol is such a primary issue for youth substance use in town, so it'd be something interesting to look at policy-wise.
So I'm Ryan. I'm a sophomore,
And I'm Tarun. I'm also a sophomore.
and we decided that one of the seminars that we attended, Hot Take: A Toxic Combo of Drugs, Human Trafficking, and Social Media, was important.
Okay, and the rise of social media has made it easier for teens to access drugs and other substances. And it's also made it a lot easier for human trafficking and online grooming to occur. So drug dealers and human traffickers take advantage of the anonymity that social media provides, and it allows kids to discover new drugs at younger ages and allows them to access it.
So a study found that 7% of human trafficking cases involve the use of social media. So this seminar, it kind of focused on the need for greater regulation with social media platforms such as Snapchat, which was one of the big ones, to prevent their exploitation by criminal elements, And a recently proposed bill in California is designated to hold social media platforms more accountable for promoting these illegal sale of fentanyl to California youth, and also the sale of unlawful firearms. And the seminar also was talking about how there should be education for parents, so that if they look through their child's phone, they can point out signs of a drug dealer contacting their child, or online groomer, and then they can address that sooner before it gets too late.
You wanna say something about the April 12th event?
Yeah. Amy, did you want to speak it, or do you want to shout you out? And then...
You can tee it up, and then I'll follow up.
Cool. Yeah, we have an event coming up that is going to address a bunch of these issues on April 12th at the Jewish Community Center, just over the line in Springfield. And it's a partnership with the Hamden District Attorney's Office and their Youth Advisory Board. And they're going to present on social media apps, safe use, risky use, and then access to drugs online. And it's a youth panel that discusses this at length, and they're local, which I think is really cool, with youth leaders from all around Hamden County. And that's at 6:30 p.m. at the JCC on April 12th, and you can register online on our website or on our Facebook page, closecommunity.org.
They've done a really good job in the past presenting to our schools in Longmeadow at the elementary level. That's what I'm most familiar with. So they are very relatable. I think it's great that parents are going to be kind of our target audience, but I encourage, I think, parents to come with their children. We'll have snacks. Maybe we'll throw in a raffle. It'd be great.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we're happy to partner. So, yeah, very cool. I expect to see every single one of these 83% at the JCC.
Let's
April
just say
12th.
84 so that it's in line
Mark
with the
your
Massachusetts.
calendars, friends. I will be hounding you.
Thanks so much, Amy.
And I think about this, I don't know if it came up in the workshop that you went to, but are there any federal regulations that are being considered? So California has proposed a bill, but do you know, did they talk about that, if there's anything
What I
being done?
saw, it's starting to get more noticeable, but there hasn't been any bills that so.
Okay. Because I wonder about maybe trying to research if there's anything in Massachusetts that regulates it, or anything at the federal level, and that could be something that we could have some activism around too, just raising awareness and putting some pressure on people to do something about it higher up. It's a point of frustration, I think, for schools, because we can't be on student social media, so it's something that we actually can't. It's a significant part of school community and school life and how students relate to each other and where you can be targeted, but it's not something that we as adults have the ability to look at. So yeah, if the platforms were more responsible, that would go a long way. So thank you. Thanks, Ryan and Tarun. So a few of us attended different workshops on cannabis.
There's a lot.
Yeah, they offered a lot of resources. So I just have notes. I don't even remember the name of the workshop that I went to, so I just have cannabis as the title here. But some of the takeaways I noticed were really related to policy, and I didn't realize that it's taxed at a lower rate in Massachusetts compared to nicotine or alcohol. So they were saying that's something that is set up as a benefit to the startup, of the business, which I hadn't really thought of. And then they were encouraging us to look in our states at where the revenue is going, because in a lot of places, the revenue has to go, there are rules about where the money that the state takes in from cannabis can go in the budget. So they also looked at the relationship between medical and adult use marijuana, and in Massachusetts, we have over 100,000 medical cards that are in circulation, and $300 million in retail sales last year. Something that came up as a concern is billboard ads, and their suggestion was to reach out to your state Cannabis Control Commission. If you're seeing, which we do see a lot of billboards in the Springfield, in that corridor, 91 and 291. So they encouraged us to go to our Cannabis Control Commission people and report what we're seeing and see if it's in compliance, because they're not supposed to have the billboards where the audience is, what's the percent? It's a certain percent.
85.
If it's under 21, you have to have 85% 21 and above, right?
Yeah.
So if you can prove that, more than 15% of the people going through that highway space are under 21, then they can't have that billboard there. So, so they were talking about that.
That seems loosely regulated.
Oh, very much so. So,
Well, there's also-
and there's a group
very-
Based on
studying
my
it, right?
ride to up and down 91.
Well, there's very
Yeah.
little way to measure.
How do you measure that?
Who's
Yeah.
being
Right.
exposed? So
Right.
there's a group out of Franklin County that just did this really cool survey on like how many people under the age of 21 are being exposed, and there's no place where billboards are located in Western Massachusetts. There are 0 billboards that would meet that threshold.
Wow.
So like basically they're de facto not allowed to be advertised in Western Mass, but no,
Yeah.
the data that the CCC gets about what the audience composition is, it's coming from the billboard company,
Oh,
which doesn't do like they don't do like real data collection. So it's really
sure.
it's really bizarre. And so it's kind of an issue around like, what are the retail outlets' rights for advertising versus like, is the law going to change just to meet that threshold? Which, to me, that's really backwards around public health. It's like we shouldn't be finding ways to,
Right.
increase more exposure to youth. We should find ways to keep them protected. So that was an interesting thing that I just learned about a few weeks ago.
Right on a direct route to a children's hospital, so,
2 of them, actually.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's
Well, and
that's a really good
my
point,
biggest
yeah.
concern with them
Like-
what has been just the content of like cartoon imagery around going to outer space and things like that. Like that's not really for adults. I don't quite understand why that has to do with adult cannabis use. But yeah, that's where we're at with billboards. It's kind of the Wild West with billboards.
Yeah.
And all the little, like it's on exit 420
Yeah.
days.
There's all these little jokes and it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
very.
Try to explain that to your 9-year-old in the car.
Yeah. Why does that matter, mommy?
So that could be another area for some activism, right?
Sure,
Like we
sure,
could
yeah.
actually
Yeah.
document how many
Yeah.
billboards there are
Yeah.
and send something to the Cannabis Control Commission. So, what's that?
And-
There's a lot.
There's a lot, right? So it would be like if we did, like a certain mile radius and said this is the number in like a certain mile radius from, from where you live. And I don't know, I bet you there's a catchy way to present the problem to the
Yeah.
Cannabis Control Commission.
And the CCC
If you-
wants the public to report because they don't have enough people out there looking at things. So
And Western Mass is probably underserved, so
Oh, yeah.
if we could be the eyes and ears of the Cannabis Control Commission on this
Great.
one and monitor it. The other idea I thought was interesting was using peer leaders, any peers who want to be trained. So I think of STAND in this capacity. Missouri was held up as an example. They have a 3-lesson program that they train peer leaders to deliver to other students. And it's basically how to use carefrontation. So it's how to have a conversation with a friend if you're worried about their substance use. So I thought that's kind of interesting because like right now STAND does go into all of the 8th grade classes and they talk about making good decisions, but we don't necessarily do this. We talk about what to do, how to have a conversation with a friend who's concerned. So something to look into and possibly add to our repertoire. So moving on to the next cannabis workshop.
yeah, I believe I was in this one with Dr. Kelly as well. The adverse impacts. This was Dr. Aria's presentation from University of Maryland. Adverse impacts of cannabis use on adolescents and young adults. She had just so much data, just updating us as to where we were at, which it was really timely for me because I think I was paying a lot of attention when we were voting on legalization, but I wasn't paying so much attention outside of like local youth use to the scientific findings federally and nationally. So almost no gender difference in cannabis use right now. 2018 to 2019, that is not the year 209, saw vaping increases, biggest jump for any substance ever. So high school perceived risk from 52% to 30% in 10 years. So people think it's way less harmful, when in reality it's much more potent and more harmful now than it was 10 years ago. So that's the wrong trend to see. 20% more likely to use cannabis in legal states for youth. Virginia Twin study is what found that. Still no substitution effect. Substitution effect is when we were being told by the cannabis lobbyists that, if we increase access to cannabis, a lot less people who use alcohol, which is much more toxic and harmful and deadly and dangerous. They'll use cannabis, which is much safer and more healthy, or less, unhealthy. But we've seen the data has borne out that there's no substitution effect. If anything, it's just now poly substance use, so two substances being used at the same time, or people aren't substituting cannabis for alcohol. They're just using both now. So neurocognitive deficits, this is stuff we've known for a really long time, but impacting a young person's ability to pay attention, executive functions, their learning, their memory. A young person's memory should be very strong, and so when you see deficits in memory, it's kind of alarming. What else? What's the next one? Oh, and I think, was this your stuff, Lisa?
Oh, I guess it got.
We
it was
we
part
kind of
the
merged
other
it.
one. Yeah, oh, okay. I don't know what I think that there's probably some folks, community-wise, not recognizing what a big change we've had in, the marijuana that people were using in the 60s, 70s, 80s that averaged about 4% THC, so the drug portion of it, whereas now it's 5 times that, and it's higher in the states. The average is higher in states where it's legal. I think just knowing that you're dealing with a whole different thing really than the past for people who are inclined to say, oh, well.
And 60% of new cannabis users are
Yeah.
under the age of the legal age of 21.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
probably, if you're in the business, that's what you want.
I mean, yeah, if you want lifelong customers,
Yeah.
loyal, lifelong customers.
We definitely, in our data here, saw an increase right after dispensaries opened. Like, it was delayed when the vote went through, it stayed stable that year, but then as
Yeah.
soon as dispensaries opened, which took like a
When they
year
actually opened.
after that, then
Yeah.
you saw a big jump up in those first 2 years. And then the pandemic hit and we took a dive down
Mhm.
after that, but we saw a jump up after, once the retail outlets opened up.
And we were told that was
So-
not going to happen by the lobbyists. They're saying, no, it's going to go way down. It's going to be a legal market. It's going to be harder to access for young people. And we saw the exact opposite. So. Okay, cannabis
Is
can
this yours?
hijack the law. Is this yours? No, this is the end of mine.
Yes, yeah.
It can hijack your long-term reward system, which is really important for young people to develop delayed gratification abilities in their brain and know that if they wait, things can turn out great. The problem with substance use and using any chemical to increase dopamine or serotonin or endorphins is that that's not a very sustainable practice. So you want to find something that's more sustainable to feel good, to trigger that reward system. And the one thing that she mentioned that I thought was really interesting is living each day as if it weren't your last. I think that's like a longer term, bigger picture vision of how you approach your day. And I've heard Rick Cresta, who's been a guest here a couple years ago, would talk about the impact on cannabis with young people, and it's not what they do when they're high. So people say, oh, when you're drunk, you get into fights, you can get into car accidents. He said, it's not what you do when you're under the influence of cannabis, it's what you don't do. And I thought that was really powerful to think about, like the things that people aren't aspiring to do or aren't following through on because they're high. And when you're high, it feels good, and you feel a little bit more, lackadaisical about your goals and things that feel good, your long-term reward system. Using to cope seems to escalate use. For parents, the idea of pre-bunking, which I mentioned earlier, so talking with your teenagers, your middle schoolers before they're exposed to cannabis. And, I've heard that, this and that about cannabis, sharing your facts and following the source of whatever your teenagers are coming up with, saying, like, oh, who said that? And just following getting to the truth together can be kind of a fun activity of what's real and what's not.
As long as you're by a water source.
Yeah, you have to have those feet deep in
Okay,
the water.
just
Yeah.
making sure.
Must be cold.
Cool. Definitely don't want to be in hot water.
No, don't avoid the hot water.
Metaphorically or in reality.
Thank you.
All right, I put this slide here just because it relates to the movement to legalize cannabis. Amy Higgins and I went to a session by Dr. Bertha Madras, who's a neuroscientist who works at Harvard Medical School. And she presented a lot of research about the impact of psychedelics on the brain. And her, she has worked for a long time in this area, even like back to grad school. She said she worked in a lab that was studying this. And, she's basically saying we already know the risks of psychedelics. And that there's a big movement right now to medicalize psychedelics or approve them through the FDA for medical use. And her thing was saying what we saw with cannabis was that medical marijuana was determined at the ballot box. Like states would have initiatives and people would vote whether or not to have medical marijuana, and like no other form of medicine is decided that way. It's decided through like clinical trial, and it's the only thing that has happened that way. And she's seeing the same thing happen now with psychedelics, where states are voting whether or not they want to approve psychedelic use, and she was really urging people to not let voters decide whether or not something is medicine. And then she really did a detailed look at the medical studies that are being cited about the psychedelics, and some of them actually do show really like promising results for PTSD in particular. But she was saying it's if you look at it, it's really small sample sizes, and the sample sizes are very skewed, self-selecting, and they rely on self-report of symptoms rather than like objective measurements of symptoms. So she was really encouraging us to have like a critical lens on when we see this research presented in the media trying to convince us to vote a certain way, that it may not mean what we think it means. So, and it turns out with psychedelics, they won't approve people with certain conditions to participate in the studies because they're being cautious. So, but as a result, they'll say, oh, well, it's working so well, but if you were using it with the whole population, you wouldn't see the same result. So, for example, all the studies involve, not all, many of them involve college-age students who already report having had a positive experience with a psychedelic. So you're getting a very skewed sample. Nobody if you've had a bad experience, you actually can't participate in the study. So you're taking out people who might have like a predisposition to have a bad experience. So, and it was interesting to think about that. And her observation was that there's a lot of money being put into this right now, the same way that there was behind cannabis when it was going through the process. And the cannabis industry definitely went through medicalization first. And then once it was medicalized in a state, then they'd take the next step and say adult use. And like every state that has adult use legalized went that way. And so this is her prediction. And she had it mapped out in years. She's like, by this year, I think we're going to see the same thing with psychedelics that you see with cannabis. So anyway, I'm going to transition a little bit. The DEA was a big presence at the conference overall. So I was just going to say a few things about the DEA. And we had the keynote speaker and the head of the DEA, Ann Milgram, who I think was my favorite speaker of all of the the speakers in the large hall. But she did a great job in her keynote, really talking about like two-prong attack of the opioid and fentanyl crisis, and she talked about like them going after the cartels, and I thought it was really fascinating from like the crime law enforcement perspective to see the map. They literally have maps of the United States and how like all the seizures they make trace back to like two regions in Mexico controlled by literally two cartels controlling the influx of fentanyl into the entire rest of the country. So she started her presentation that way, saying like, oh, like this is what we're after. And she said they've infiltrated the cartels and they're doing a lot of, enforcement undercover stuff with the cartels. And then she flipped it and said, and we're also working with like the population in the United States that's been impacted. And this to me was a very different look from the DEA than what I've seen in the past, and I was really impressed by it. So she said that this is the hallway of their headquarters. And they basically asked for family members who had lost somebody to a fentanyl overdose to send pictures of their loved one. And she said every hallway in the entire headquarters is now filled with these pictures, and it's open to the public to stop by and visit, and people do. So it's become, for me, I just can imagine like if you're a DEA worker and you're like really stuck in like tracking down cartels and the law enforcement stuff, to walk in and see this every day, keeps you grounded, I would think, in like what your bigger mission is and why you're doing what you're doing. So I was really, really impressed by that. They also have created a lot of prevention resources. So one of the conferences that I went to, or workshops that I went to, was on how to use their prevention curriculum. They have a free curriculum, grades 3 through 12, which you can use one lesson of, or you can use the whole thing, and it really, they have a whole aspect of it which deals with counterfeit pills and some of what we already are doing in the high school, but they've brought some of these lessons all the way down to third grade, like why you should never use somebody else's medication, like, in language that little kids can understand. So I thought that was really impressive. And then Paul and I both noticed there's a free drug exhibit that they will send to your community, but you have to have a really large space. So I was thinking about the quadrangle, and like it's a museum level exhibit, and it's basically is on like the fentanyl crisis specifically, I believe, or maybe opiates overall. But I wondered about reaching out to other coalitions in our area to say, like, if we requested this from the DEA in the quadrangle as like a shared community space, how they have traveling exhibits that get set up there. I think that would be awesome. So they also shared.
Could some of the local colleges help us out with that too?
Yeah,
Like-
it doesn't. It's free, so I
Right.
think it's just making the ask
We just need a
and seeing
space.
like if we
need
get
a
enough
big
people
space.
to like, yeah.
But,
It's
yeah.
I guess we'd have to find out if the quadrangle has the space big enough, but it's probably one of the
I don't
only
know what the
places in our
quadrangle is.
area.
What is the quadrangle?
That's the four museums or five
Yeah.
museums in
Oh,
Springfield.
Springfield.
The
Okay.
Springfield museums.
Dr.
So-
Seuss Museum is over there, yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
Or like maybe Bay Path College,
Yeah.
even in Longmeadow.
That's an idea. So I guess that the
Space,
first step
yeah.
would probably be finding out who has the space and who would be open to hosting the exhibit. And then if we had a bunch of partners sign on to show them like there's interest, in bringing it to our community, it would be pretty cool. So anyway, then they had some resources on for parents about talking with their young people, college campus resources. And they also did a presentation. I'll let students talk about this one. It was very, very powerful and emotional presentation, so I'll let them take it away.
Yeah, so I'm Luca Bresci, I'm a sophomore. And this was one of the meetings we went to that we thought was, like you said, super moving and super important. It was about including families affected by substance abuse and prevention. This meeting was led by a mother who had just lost her son to fentanyl poisoning, and she shared ways to involve families affected by substances and how to like approach and like just interact with the situation that they were put in.
My name is Rhea Sandler. I'm a senior. And the speaker emphasized how to continually invite these families to community events and give them opportunities to share their stories, because even though the speaker noted that people, like when these families have to interact with people, those people might like find it uncomfortable or don't know really how to approach the situation, but the more that these stories are shared at these places, it becomes an open conversation between the families affected and then the wider community. And then this reduces the stigma for kids who might have heard things about substances within the community, are fearing things, have personal experiences with them, but it gives them a more open conversation by sharing these stories, because it is so impactful. And that she mentioned that even though it's a hard conversation to share and have, is one of the most effective ways of approaching prevention.
Yeah, it was interesting, like the DEA, it's the DEA reaching out to these families. Again, that to me is just like, it's a completely new initiative. And they have, out of this, they had such a big response that they now host family summits throughout the country, like on a rotating basis regionally. And they invite families like to those summits so that they can hear from families, what do you need from us? Like what would be helpful, for, from us, or what could we have done to help address the situation and maybe prevent this. Like they really want to hear from families who have lost people. So it was impressive. So they had, at this panel, they actually had DEA agents and parents who have been at these summits together, talk about their partnership and how they've brought more work into the community as a result of it.
A powerful theme throughout the whole conference that made me think of what you just said, Shelley, was like sharing your narrative, whether it's from the student perspective, from the parent perspective, from the if you're a coalition representative, whatever your story is, like getting that out, sharing that, and having that be part of our decisions. What those narratives being part of what helps us make these decisions to support our youth. I felt like, I don't know if any of you guys thought that, but it was all about like storytelling and getting it out there.
Yeah, really
That's
like
really
putting
important.
a face, like they did I think at the conference, they did a much better job of like really putting a face on the numbers. You know, like they share a lot of numbers all the time, but they really put a face on it throughout. So, yeah.
It's cool to see. I've been going to CADCA for, I missed a couple years with COVID, but about 10 years, 8 years on site. And it's cool to see CADCA, so the Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America, this huge organization, and all the partners that they bring in to do all these presentations. It's cool to see how they've changed in 10 years around sort of stigmatizing substance users and, laying out all sorts of moral and character judgment around people who use, to now like, it is a brain disease. We need to support these families who are struggling. It's such a huge shift over the last 10 years, and it's so great and so important. And even like the Massachusetts Bureau of Substance Addiction Services last year was the Bureau of Substance Abuse Services. So like all these things starting to change just in the last few years. And sadly, it's probably because so many more people are being touched by this fatal opioid epidemic. But it's at least the community coalitions of America have been shifting in how in tune and sensitive they are to families that are experiencing this stuff.
Yeah, it's true. It's a notable shift. I remember the first year I went, the DAA presentation focused on how they were using like air surveillance to go into
Crack down on the marijuana,
grows
yeah.
in California. It was a totally different feeling. So like the way the DEA was presenting at this conference. So it was great. So, I think this is yours.
Yeah, this
right?
is me. Non-medical use of prescription drugs. NMU, non-medical use. This was one of the presentations I attended. They talked about stimulant use, so stimulants like Ritalin, Adderall, and other amphetamines like that. Non-medical use stimulant use is usually precipitated by other illicit drug use, including cannabis, with regards to young people. So, I mean, you can't make a causal relationship between a 14-year-old using cannabis regularly, but you can see that most people abusing or misusing stimulants at the age of 18 started with a different illicit drug earlier. That's most people. And then mostly diversion from a friend or a relative for free. So when people are accessing prescription drugs, it's not usually, it's a friend or relative and they're getting it for free. They're not usually spending $35 for a pill. And then questions that I left the presentation with were like, how does Long Meadow High School and the middle school manage student medications? So stimulants, alprazolam, depressants, etc. Do nurses administer the meds ever? Are parents monitoring their teens' medication use closely? And then I got an answer to that, but it'd be cool to hear like how the school.
Do you want to talk about that?
I mean, obviously, if there's an order
You have the-
from a doctor, we would prescribe that. We would give that to the child. At the elementary level, I know that that's the same
The nurses.
at all levels. So that if there's a 12 o'clock medication administration, whatever medication it could be an inhaler, albuterol, whatever.
Like ibuprofen, right?
Yeah. Well,
I think so.
We can sign off on.
Yeah,
parents can sign
some
off
parents
on that.
do.
Yeah. But if there's a child who has an ADHD medication or anti-anxiety medication and it's a time release and you need to take it at noon, we would give that during the school day. Even at the JCC, we have medical orders for some kids who need to take those medications, and so we would honor that doctor's order and an explicit note from the prescriber.
And that's JCC's like pre-K.
Yep.
Like early childhood
Yep.
development. And then you used to work in the elementary schools in Long Meadow, so
Yep.
Yeah.
K through 5?
K to 5.
Yeah,
Mhm.
okay.
It's the
And even
same
before that in the
policy
middle
about
school, it was, there were kids who would come down at, noon or let's say, or midday.
Yeah, we don't allow, even at the high school, though, you might be responsible enough to be in charge of your own medications at home.
Yeah.
We don't allow you to give yourself your own medications during the
Right,
school day.
right.
So we ask that it's with the nurse and that you go to the nurse's office if you have to take something within the course of the school day.
And the
That's great.
language is also different if you're on a field trip, right? So if you receive
Yeah.
medication during the day, that's monitored by the school nurse. Field trips are a little different, although I would imagine nurses are going on all the field trips with kids for the most part. So.
That was what they were recommending. They were like,
Yeah.
the more structure and the more
Yep.
oversight, the better. Even especially for just accidental stuff, kids taking too much or someone stealing it from a friend. Or stimulants purchased online are the most common overdose drugs for stimulant overdoses. So that's online purchasing, similar to what.
Oops. Because of the fake pill?
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
yeah.
Fake pills and fentanyl.
Yeah.
And so for youth, if you think you would or could benefit from taking for example, just a benzodiazepine, a stimulant, a painkiller, the outcome of this presentation was talk to your parents first.
Yeah.
Hopefully you have that open dialogue, open comfort with your parents to talk to them first, and then you would go to your primary care provider and or pediatrician. Psychiatrist would be the next step, and then you can learn more about prescription drugs and their effects. I think it was interesting to hear them talk about that. I think a lot of these conferences, they'll just say like, it just comes off as anti, and it's like some kids need help with their, with their depression, and so like
Anxiety, yeah.
and they haven't been prescribed anything yet because they haven't been diagnosed and blah blah blah. So it was really heartening to see like like kids, you can access these drugs if you really are self-medicating. You think you need them. Here's the sequence of events that should take place, and a reminder to always just only take a prescription drug prescribed to you by your doctor, and never anyone else's. And there was a lot of really cool evidence around, and I know Ms. Warren does a presentation for schools around basically natural ways to have a stimulant or natural ways to use a muscle relaxer or depressant, but like they recommended if you need a stimulant, ice baths have this amazing research coming out in the last couple of years, or like cold water immersion, I think is what they call it, where like you're gonna have
Cold
a
showers. We talked
spike
about
in
that.
dopamine for like
Did you do this?
Just saying that for real.
20 minutes or
Yeah.
more, right, of a dopamine spike, and then like the way it comes back down is super slow. Whereas if you take a medication stimulant, you'll get that spike, and then the drop can be pretty precipitous. So it's like ice baths are, and you can drop lower than where your standard, where your norm was. So ice baths like never go below. It's like this really healthy way to have a stimulant. And then a muscle relaxer would be like breath work, mindfulness, meditation, boxed breathing they talked about, which I've heard a few examples of what boxed breathing is. But I just love the like natural, and you have a whole class on like healthy ways to basically live a life above the influence of substances.
Yes, I mean, we definitely know if you can find
I
a
think-
natural means to
Yeah.
manipulate your brain chemistry, it's going to be more sustainable than if you're using any kind of recreational substance or even prescribed substances, right? If you can find a way to naturally build it in, it's way better. And it's interesting, like I'm thinking of the stimulant issue, and Paul and I noticed when we were looking at the middle school data that like 75% of our middle schoolers who vape nicotine also reported using energy drinks, and that's a stimulant. So it was interesting to see like that pairing of stimulants there, and we see way more. We don't ask it at the high school, but there's a lot more caffeine use than there used to be years ago, by teenagers. So it is a form of, using a stimulant, but it's something that we thought, like that might be worth exploring, like middle schoolers using energy drinks. I don't know.
I
don't know
think,
if any
yeah.
of you youth have any thoughts about that.
If you
What
look
your
at a middle
observations
schooler
are.
drinking a Starbucks coffee drink, it's not the end of the world. They're not going to overdose on caffeine.
No.
But the thing we were thinking about was the chronic use of caffeine at early ages. It's wiring your brain for this external spike in dopamine, or it's a stimulant. So
Yeah.
it's
Wait till grad school.
yeah, it's kind of true. If you can get through undergrad with
Yeah.
no caffeine
You
addiction, it's
can.
pretty amazing.
You can.
But yeah, the early use of anything, nicotine, caffeine, it's just wiring your brain for addiction, and so it's really great to delay as long as possible.
That's interesting. It's like not a CADCA conference, but another conference I was at recently on the use of psychedelics for trauma. they said, and this was like a very pro psychedelic conference, but they said you can achieve the same benefits through meditation and breath work and what they called non-ordinary states that you can learn to induce yourself without using any substance, and that you can get into that same place where you can get the therapeutic benefits without needing a substance. So I thought that was really, interesting. I'm glad that they recognized it too, because there were definitely therapists there who said, like, well, if you're never going to be on board with psychedelics or they don't get approved, you can still use these techniques, but with a natural process. So.
This is the last I'll talk for a little while. I'm sorry I've been talking so much, but naloxone access is another presentation I went to. There were some folks from New Jersey and Pennsylvania and Philly that talked about how to increase access to naloxone and how to do it as a community that collaborates with other organizations like law enforcement, schools, behavioral health. And so these were some of their biggest, recommendations. So like set up nalox boxes, which our local police department has, and they're organizing, setting those up in as many public spaces as possible. Naloxone trainings, including stigma reduction. We just trained every 10th and 11th grader in Longmeadow Public Schools basically on naloxone use and signs and symptoms of an overdose, and then talking about stigma and reducing that. Family support resources like Learn to Cope, we have those in place, and Learn to Cope is such a valued resource locally. Programs like the Drug Addiction Response Team, or DART. There's a team for Longmeadow Police Department has a couple of DART trained officers who are also crisis intervention or CIT trained officers. And so I just was at this presentation checking all these boxes, like, wow, Longmeadow is just really, really doing a great job. Engaging local media ads on overdose prevention, fentanyl poisoning. This current meeting is on LCTV Live right now, and it's also going on their YouTube page. So it's really, LCTV has been an amazing partner to us and our work. Data collection, HCAT, the Hampden County Addiction Task Force, has been collecting data on overdoses and non-fatal and fatal overdoses in Hampden County, and where like hot spots are and how to sort of focus and target naloxone access for these regions. So they've been doing a really good job at that. And then partnerships with behavioral health organizations like Behavioral Health Network. They're the team of behavioral health specialists that will team up with our DART team. So if there's an overdose in Longmeadow or any substance-related incident that law enforcement or emergency medical services respond to, within 48 hours, a DART representative from the police department in plain clothes will show up with a behavioral health specialist from BHN, and they're just going to visit that house and check in with the family and check in with the individual affected, just to see how they're doing. And then we created a little care package, Close Community Coalition and the Close Compasses, which is a group of volunteers who support families who are experiencing addiction in their family. So we created these little care packages, so when DART and BHN do their 48-hour visit, it's a little care package that's provided to them with resources and all sorts of other nice things, a few books that our coalition has brought together. So I just was really excited about how Longmeadow is all over naloxone access and all over training young people and training adults and providing free trainings, and we're just checking a lot of boxes. We're not perfect, but we're doing really, really well.
I'd like to give a shout out to Tapestry on this too, because Tapestry just helped the students, and I don't want to do all this. Would a student like to share what you all just did and what we have coming up with the pizza party for posterity on camera? Rhea, we're looking at you as the senior.
We just had a naloxone campaign where we encouraged the whole school to go out and get naloxone, and then we invited Tapestry to come after school one day, and the woman who came brought like about 50 boxes of naloxone, was able to hand out every single one of them to students at LHS. And then we encouraged people to fill out the form if they went out and got naloxone either on their own or from Tapestry, and the sophomore class ended up winning. So because of that, we're gonna give them a pizza party. Yes.
Well done.
April 6th, pizza party. So, it was great to see Tapestry willing to do that and to host it in the school lobby. And then I've since heard also the Mass Department of Public Health has somebody who's also willing to help distribute at public events too. So I envision us being able to continue, to invite them when we're having something.
There's an option to give it out at vaccination clinics too. So it's something that we're looking into in the future at
You
the
guys host
J.
a lot of,
Yeah, so hosting a vaccine clinic, but also making access for
That's a
no
great
kids.
idea. Yeah.
And how inspiring to see youth leaders taking the charge
So
of that.
great.
Let's go, man.
And
Yeah, we were ahead of, I do
Do
feel
it.
like, I hope you all felt like that in DC too. Like, we were like right there or ahead of the
Yeah.
curve a little bit
Yeah.
on this one, so.
And the stigma
That's
work
good.
that you guys are doing by doing that is so huge. I'm thinking about like
Yeah.
15 years ago, people would never want to help a junkie. Like there's all this crazy stigma around substance use, and especially with opioid use. And now it's like, it doesn't even seem like it's on the radar of a lot of young people. It's like, oh my gosh, that person's suffering an addiction. That's like a really horrible situation. And you guys are just looking to help them and help their family out. It's just like totally different community response, and I just love it. It's very inspiring.
Yeah, the Tapestry person was very impressed and moved by how the LHS students responded to her and responded to having access. They were all excited, like, oh, you're saving me a trip to the pharmacy. And, it was great. They were more educated than the average adult out there, I would say. So, let me see, whoops, I think we're close to the end
Yeah, a
of
couple
what
more.
we're saying. I attended a workshop on how to build protective factors for LGBTQ plus students. LGBTQ plus students have a higher comorbidity with mental health and substance use in the 18 plus population, and we also see that in our students in our survey here. Higher risk for a lot of mental health indicators and also higher rates of substance use. So if you can basically reduce the vulnerability in that population and build in protective factors, they're less vulnerable to that. So they talked about SOGI change efforts. SOGI stands for sexual orientation and gender identity, that they double the risk of suicide attempt in this population. So this group was called the Family Acceptance Project, and they've done a lot of studies that show how you can build awareness in families of people who are in the LGBTQ plus community on how their support of their family member reduces the risk for mental health issues and substance use. So they have free posters that are for distribution in the community, and they're not so much for schools because these are posters for parents, but they talked about really trying to get them out into like your pediatrician's offices, like places where parents are with their kids, to just educate parents about the impact they can have. And they've literally studied families where this happens, this is how the depression rate changes. Family where this happens, this is what happens to the suicidal, rate of suicidality or suicide attempts. And they had a really strong database for their work, and all their stuff is free. So just putting it out there because I think it could be something if we do some outreach in our local pediatrician's office that we might want to include. And they're just, they're free downloadable posters because they're grant funded and they're nonprofit or donation and grant maybe, but it's all nonprofit and they don't charge for anything. So, and then in the same vein of building prevention factors, I'm not sure whose slide this is. I can talk about it does anybody know who? No? Maybe it's somebody who's not here then. So there's an SEL program called Preventure, which has also gotten some press in the New York Times. And it's a way of being more targeted. So rather than having every student exposed to the same SEL curriculum, you actually do personality profiling of your students, and then you separate them based on their personality profile. And then you give them access to skills that line up well with their personality profile. So it kind of identifies like strengths and deficits associated with that personality profile, and then it has a really targeted way of educating students in those groups. And what I've seen, I didn't attend this at the conference, this is just from me reading the New York Times article, they have it in the middle school, almost like an advisory group, activity, and that's a ideal age for, kind of using the intervention. So in advisories, they would have, if they're doing this, it might be like 4 or 5 sessions, and students are regrouped based on their personality profiles for those sessions. So.
Great. Well, that concludes the presentation piece of our meeting.
Well, before we go to meetings and events, though, is there anything that wasn't on the slides that anybody wants to share from the conference? Takeaways or ideas you came back with that you didn't formalize on the slides?
I mean, overall, we met so many kids from so many different states, which was interesting. And it's interesting to see how many other groups are just like ours. whether it's in Hawaii or Kansas and places all over.
You know how many youth were there?
A lot.
It was
Okay, cool.
quite a bit.
There was quite a bit.
It was,
A lot-
it was about
quite a bit.
85% youth.
Yeah. There's just, I mean, this was like their biggest turnout yet as a conference. It was, how many people were there?
4,000 people.
4,000 something.
Yeah.
So
Wasn't
it's
it
a
like
big
600
event.
youth? I thought it was something. I thought I remember hearing in that
It was a big
range.
number.
A lot.
Because they had you all in
Quite a
that
bit.
one big room. Yeah. So, right.
It's quite a bit.
Quite a few.
So even though people were from all these places, you felt like you could connect and have something
Yeah,
in common
everyone
because you're
had
dealing with the same kind of
everyone
issues.
has the same goal in the end, so
Yeah.
it's nice to see that.
That's cool. Anybody else want to share?
I think it was really interesting how we focused a lot on Narcan use, and then Ms. Warren shared on our Google Classroom that there was like some bills, and I think New York, that were being passed, hopefully to have Narcan be an over-the-counter drug rather than a prescription drug. So it's just a lot of things that we focused on, brought up to our like state legislature is being progressed in other states. So hopefully our state will follow soon.
I think it's federal now, that it's expected to roll out for over-the-counter approval at the federal level. So, and we had just mentioned that in our meetings, but I don't know that that's what, it was literally a week later
Could've
that
been
they
you.
announced that.
It was totally you
It
guys.
could have been us.
It was
Yep.
days before when you guys were speaking to Senator Warren and Senator Markey's reps. Yeah.
I mean, the same thing happened with flavor bans. You know, we talked about it and then it was done, but I think that it was in the works, but it's helpful to have the voters show up and say like, you know, like we also believe this should happen, so. Thank you. Anybody else want to share anything? Okay, there was a giant brain that we could walk through. Remember that? Did anybody walk through the giant?
Oh, I did walk through a giant.
Did you? Yeah, I can never picture like how to use that. Or, like, but anyway.
It's so expensive.
How expensive is the
Like
giant brain?
$9,000.
Oh my gosh.
Really?
So,
Let's just make our own brain
yeah.
out of foam.
Paper mache.
Paper mache.
Oh, I bet you could.
Meetings and events. We have got some stuff coming up. So we're gonna try to get our subcommittees, which we used to call subcommittees, back in action. They're now action teams. Outreach and marketing has worked for years, working on social norms campaigns, helping with the parent social norms, the postcards that we send to parents, social host liability information. That's an example of some of the work that outreach and marketing is doing. And people that are in tonight's meeting, you have the ability to sign up for one of these. So if you wanted to be a part of one of these, that'd be really helpful. Because we're going to meet in the next few months with each of these groups. Some of them are ad hoc, some of them are pretty regular. So, and then event planning, for example, we're going to try to coordinate a pretty concerted effort to train as many school staff, but also just community members in mental health first aid, teen mental health first aid, which is really exciting. And then there's an April 12th event at the JCC featuring the Hampden County District Attorney's Youth Advisory Board and access to prescription drugs online. Or
Can I speak about the youth mental health thing?
Yeah.
So I don't know if I think Grace and Rio, you maybe were at the meeting way at the beginning of the year. Remember asking for teen mental health training? So it takes time to get stuff through. And what we discovered was that you had to have a minimum number of your staff trained before you'd be eligible to offer a youth one. So the staff trainings had already all been planned, but now that is on the docket for the professional days at the beginning of next school year. So we'll have that minimum met after that first round of professional development days. Then we can seek, so it's like a whole year after you suggested it. So I know, Rio, you will be gone to not see the outcome of that. But you were part of that conversation. So after that, we can pursue youth mental health first aid. And we do have a community partner who's not here tonight, who's interested in helping fund training for anybody working with youth in the community. So I'm looking at you with
Nice.
the JCC. So it would be great because we'll have all of the paras and Long Meadow Public Schools will be trained in the professional development days. And then if we could do in the community, anybody who's working with youth. So it could be coaches, it could be Parks and Rec people, it could be JCC staff, like anybody who has a role working with youth, if we could offer them training and then follow it up with like a teen mental health first aid training.
When we
So-
did it in Hampton Wilbraham probably, I don't know, 10 or whatever years ago. It was lots like business owners, religious people, organization, like daycares. I mean, there were just so many, not daycares, but like after school programs that
Yeah,
serviced
yeah.
youth, so,
Yeah, I hadn't thought about employers, like if we're
Yep.
doing youth and, employee assistance,
Yep, yep.
kind of thinking that would be good too. So anyway, if you're interested in like working on those kinds of actual project and events, that would be event planning. But
I mean,
it's my long speech about it.
thanks for planting the seed, Rhea. It's gonna happen.
That's right.
I'll keep updated on it.
Yeah, stay tuned.
Yeah.
Well, and I think you were interested in youth leaders being able to support their peers if they see signs and symptoms of a young person struggling with a mental health issue or social emotional stuff. And I think that's just so cool that young people want to do that. Because I think the big push is like parents and adults and school staff. But I think it can be a yes and I just love that approach. So thanks, Rhea. We're gonna miss you.
I'm gonna miss it.
We're gonna have one more meeting before you. Actually, will you have graduated by?
She will.
Oh my gosh. Well,
We
Rhea,
should just have a, we should have a
Let's
party
not think about
though.
that right now.
yeah, we'll do a party as soon as the cameras shut down.
Okay, all right.
Youth cannabis use prevention is another action team. For example, just this sort of billboard ad placement, environmental scan, retail cannabis environmental scans. We have distributed safe storage postcards to all the retail outlets, cannabis outlets, within a 4-mile radius, I believe, of Longmeadow Public Schools. So doing work like that and increasing access to youth cannabis education. Assessment and evaluation, they've worked on school climate survey questions in the past, and then analyzing the survey data that we get back from the survey every year, and developing the parent survey and analyzing that data. So that's a really great group to work on if you like data
As well
and
as,
numbers.
like focus groups and stakeholder interviews, key stakeholder interviews.
Yeah.
So like just, getting information.
Qualitative and quantitative data. So we want your help. And then overdose prevention and recovery, that would include naloxone trainings for the 10th and 11th graders, Close Compass volunteers. Close Compass volunteers are people in Longmeadow who have lived experience supporting a loved one through their substance use and their struggles with substance use, and they want to volunteer to help other families access treatment, recovery, and support options. And then, if you're interested, email me, info@closecommunity.org. And just a few examples of just some of the stuff that's coming up that falls into some of these action teams. So the Social Norms Public Service Announcement Contest is back. This happened a year or two ago, and we're doing it again in teaming up with LCTV. And we want young people to submit their content for a social norms, positive social norm messaging campaign by April 18th. So email info@closecommunity.org for more information. And there's an example just of a positive social norm right there. 91% of LHS students do not vape. And then
But they do own parrots.
in Paris?
No, they do own parrots.
Oh, yeah. They- Scarlet Macaw is compulsory.
A
Yeah.
macaw, sorry.
I don't know. Yeah, that's not Scarlet Macaw. That's blue. I don't know what that kind of macaw is.
I love that.
It's okay,
That's
she's
great.
named Scarlet.
Yeah. Macaw. I wonder if that's an Irish name. So the next slide.
Totally.
Oh, and here's an example of parent messaging and social host liability messaging. The Parents Who Host Lose the Most campaign. So prom and graduation season is coming up, and we want to normalize and advertise that most parents, 92% of Longmeadow parents do not allow teen drinking in their home. And we want parents to know that norm. So we've shared postcards, we've shared this campaign. We have lawn signs here if there are parents that wanted to take them home for the spring and put them up in their lawn. If you want info on that, you can email info@closecommunity.org. And the safe storage stickers that you might see, this is sort of like a sticker shock campaign that we've worked with Grapevine, and we're trying to work with even more pizza places locally who will deliver pizza to your house, and then these stickers will be on the top of the pizza box. So just little heads up reminder tips on how to safely store medications, substances, alcohol, cannabis in your home. And that's the outreach and marketing group would have helped develop that, and they did help develop that. And then a parent survey, so this is assessment and evaluation. We are surveying, and that little QR code is live, so if you are a parent of a Longmeadow teen, middle or high schooler, we want to hear from you. We need your opinions and experiences parenting here. Help us understand where to focus our prevention efforts. All of your responses are completely anonymous, so there's a QR code right there. Share it with your parents. It is a live survey until the end of the school year, so please fill that out, parents. And then I believe Dr. O'Shea will share that in the coming days. So stay tuned for that email from the superintendent. We're having this event on April 12th at the JCC with Amy Steck's wonderful organization, and social media app, safe use, risky use, access to drugs online. This would be part of the event planning action team that would help us coordinate this. And that's happening at the JCC April 12th, 6:30 p.m. Please register online. You can go to our website or Facebook to sign up and register. And that's with the Hampden District Attorney's Youth Advisory Board presenting. Oh, and also the Longmeadow Police Department will be in attendance, and they're going to present what's going on in Longmeadow with regards to social media, safety, and teen substance use and teen substance access on social media. So that's going to be a great part of that evening as well. And then our next meeting is June 13th, Tuesday night, 7 p.m. on LCTV, which Rhea will have graduated by then. And so, are you the only senior in the room?
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, Molly.
Oh my gosh, Molly. Oh, Molly. So, if we can go back to, can you reload? That's what happened, I think. Can
This
you,
here?
or just reload the presentation, maybe?
Oh, you added stuff in?
I did, yeah. Just as
I can go off and then you can go on.
I can't. I don't know if I can go on because it
Yeah,
hasn't been
should.
giving me
I'm gonna go
the
off.
A15.
And then now try it.
It just hasn't given me the option.
Is it there now?
A15. It's not.
Okay.
But if you go back on, if you like reload your
All right.
screen, and I have A08, A07. Anywho, I wanted to give Molly and Vivian a shout out, and I was going to show them some of their work. Show some of their work.
Where is it on here?
A15?
I mean, on the show, on the presentation.
Well, did you?
I reloaded, but I don't have anything else on here.
Oh, it's going to be after. It's going to be before the Social Norms PSA contest is backslide.
No, I don't have it.
Okay. Anywho, Molly and Vivian, you guys did such a great job designing. Well, that's one of the designs right there. Designing all the high school social norms posters. I mean, Vivian really designed them, and then Molly just chopped them up and made them her own.
Well,
Molly
Stan
and
actually worked together on, right, on the images one? Not Vivian, not alone. Just
so you weren't flying solo, Vivian?
I think she kind of was.
Oh.
We like.
I thought we had a meeting.
We
with
talked
people.
about
We
it.
talked about it, but
Yeah,
Viv
it was
executed
like-
it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So I'm stand corrected.
But people can walk around and take a look at all the messages that they helped design for the high school. And then Molly took a lot of the feedback from the middle schooler leadership, the peer leaders for both middle schools, and she helped design a very specific social norms messaging campaign for the middle schools. And I just wanted to thank Vivian and Molly. Did you guys want to say anything about just how social norms marketing works at the high school?
Got
Oh, there
it.
they are.
We've got it.
Thanks, Shelley. There's just an example of what Stan and Vivian came up with and what Molly helped edit.
cool. That's great.
But yeah, I would love for you guys to speak just, I guess, why you chose these themes and how this messaging is effective in the school.
Okay, so I chose we chose the Be Real thing, like a spin on Be Real, because a lot of people at our school like use it a lot. So
Be Real is an app.
yeah, so it was just like a good way to like get in touch with people who are going to be looking at it. And then the way the social norms work is you focus on like positive feedback. So it's more like you can like relate to the data rather than like seeing who's the outlier.
Thanks, Vivian. Anything else, Molly?
Not really. I feel like Vivian kind of did the most part. I kind of just edited them. But
No, but you created the middle school
yeah,
ones.
for the middle school ones, I did like a Spotify one and like an Instagram one because that's kind of what middle schoolers like to use other than Be Real.
Yeah. And then, did you do a TikTok? No, not TikTok.
I did do a TikTok.
You did
Yeah.
a TikTok?
Sort of just played on the social
Yeah.
media theme of middle schoolers. And they also just wanted to see, the middle school students wanted to see like outdoor, healthy outdoor things, like beautiful outdoor things, forest, snow, hiking, things like that. And so we included that into the messaging as well. But Molly's been so awesome. Did you deliver in the Williams Middle School today?
I did.
She's been very active delivering all these posters, these 11 by 17 posters, to the high school teachers who have signed up to host these in their classroom, to normalize all these healthy behaviors, as well as the middle school peer leaders who are going to put this up over the next few months in their middle school to normalize all these healthy behaviors at the middle school. So these are campaigns that have been, there's evidence that shows that this will close the gap in perception between students thinking that it's normal to use substances and the actual real number of students who are using substances. It'll close the gap in perception, and when you have that gap in perception closed, you usually see a decrease in substance use as well. So it's something that we're really excited about continuing with the school district. It's been so fun to do. That's all we got. I wanted to shout out Molly and Vivian. I'm so glad I remembered. Yeah. And Molly's here. Molly's a senior, and Ria's a senior. Thank you for all your amazing work as seniors. And if we don't see you at the next meeting, best of luck at Plymouth State and BU. Did I get it right? Oh my God. No?
UMass Dartmouth.
Oh my UMass Dartmouth!
We were close.
It's so, but they're both green, I think, and on the ocean. I think that's pretty close. Yeah. UMass Dartmouth. Molly's gonna be an amazing nurse someday. So just if you're looking for a primary care provider in 6 years,
Get on the wait list now.
yeah, get on our wait list now.
Call her.
Exactly. That's our meeting. If anyone else has anything to share or questions, this would be a great time to do it. If not, thank you for joining us for the quarterly Close Community Coalition meeting. My name is Paul McNeil. I'm the program director, coalition coordinator, and board members Lisa Taylor Kelly, Chris Rich, Shelley Warren, sector representative leader, what's your name? Amy Steck. And then a bunch of youth leaders have been here from the Students Together Against Negative Decisions group at Long Meadow High School. Thanks for joining us. And cut. Thanks, Brian.